2025 just started and I have made some big adjustments to my investing portfolio over the past month. So today you'll discover why my investing portfolio has been decreasing by over $40,000 compared to last month. As always, I'll first start by sharing with you what are the different individual companies and the exchange trade funds that I have in my portfolio. And then we'll take a look at the sectoral distribution of it, followed by all the numerous transactions that I've made over the past month of December 2024. First, let's take a look at the individual companies that I have in the technology sector. And as you can see, I have most of the big GAFAM, which are Apple, Meta, Google, and Amazon. And I also have a few shares of Tesla where I am currently up quite massively on all of these important positions. But as you'll discover later on, I have decided to take some profit on most of these companies over the past couple of weeks and months because they have been exploding in value lately. In terms of the energy sector, you can see that I hold both Enbridge and Pembina, which are two energy companies located in Canada. And in both cases, you can see that they've been performing quite well over the past couple of months, where you can see that notably Pembina is up by close to 100% on the average price that I've paid for. But as I always mention, I haven't included all the dividend income that I've made and that I have generated from these two companies over the past 3 years. So all the gain and losses that you can see in these tabs are basically all the unrealized profit or losses that I haven't made yet. In terms of the financial sector, you can see that I hold one of the largest Canadian banks, which hasn't been performing quite well lately, which is the TD Bank. But the other company is one of the best performers in my overall portfolio, and it is the insurance company Manulife, where you can see that this one is up by more than 120% compared to the average price that I've paid for it. The communication sector, unfortunately, has been by far the worst performing sector in my portfolio over the past 3 years, where you can see that the only company that I have on that side now is only TELUS. Over the last couple of months, you've seen that I've sold all my Bell shares, but recently I've decided to keep TELUS because I have some high hopes that they might be able to rebound with the decrease of the interest rate that is predicted for the future. Nevertheless, at the moment, I am currently down close to 25% on the average price that I've paid for these shares. In terms of the only consummation company that I have in my portfolio, you can see that I am holding two my Couche-Tard shares that are currently representing close to 5% of my total assets. And in the case of Couche-Tard, despite being up close to 40% on the average price that I've paid for it, this company hasn't been able to perform as greatly as I was expecting them to do over the last couple of months and over the past year. In terms of the only materials company that I hold in my portfolio, it is the company Savaria, which is basically creating wheelchair and stair lift for older people. With the aging of the population, I personally believe that this company will become pretty important over the next couple of decades. And in their case, you can see that on the average price that I've paid for, I'm currently up close to 32%. In terms of the real estate investment trust company that I have in my portfolio, which is Raucan, you can see that this company that is currently worth over 6% of my total assets is still only up by about 40%. And so even if this company is giving great monthly income, I am currently reconsidering the fact to potentially relocate my assets from this company to another one. And for the last company that I hold in my portfolio, it is the business 5N Plus that represents less than 1% of my total assets. And in their case, I've been able to make some great profit on it lately, where I'm up close to 70%. Finally, going into the ETF section, you can see that by far the largest assets that I have in my portfolio is the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF with the ticker VFV. In fact, this fund currently represents close to 15% of my assets, but eventually I want to increase this ponderation to over 20 to 25% of them. And in their case, you can see that the unrealized profit that I've made on it is of close to 50%. Then to track the global market as a whole, I've decided to go with the iShares Core Equity ETF with the ticker XEQT. At the moment, you can see that this ETF is only worth less than 4% of my total assets, but eventually I also want to increase this ponderation to over 10% of it. And in that case, you can see that I'm currently up by only 12% on the average price that I've paid for it. Then to track the Canadian market, I've decided to include the iShares S&P TSX ETF with the ticker XIU. In their case as well, I currently don't have a lot of my assets invested in it, but eventually I want to increase this ponderation to over 10 to 15%. And in total with XIU, I've been able to make some unrealized profit of over 15%. Finally, the last ETF that I have in my portfolio is the famous Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF with the ticker SCHD. As you've been able to discover later on in the video, I've decided to sell a few shares of this ETF to reinvest it somewhere else, but at the moment it is still worth about 2% of my assets. And in their case, just like my Canadian ETF, I am currently up close to 15% on the price that I've paid for it. So in total, it makes that my portfolio is currently worth about $156,000, where I currently have over $60,000 of unrealized profit or some gains of over 62%. Here we can have a look at my ETF section where you can notice that I only have 4 ETFs right now where I've sold 2 of them in the past month. So you can see that I decided to sell both all my possession in cash and all my possession in VIG. But at the moment, you can still see that I have some unrealized profit of over $9,000, which represent about 33% of gain. For the sectoral distribution of my portfolio, you can see that by far the largest sector in it is the technology sector, which represents over 36% of my total assets. Surprisingly, the ETF sector only comes as the second largest one with 23% of it, but eventually over the next couple of months, I will re-increase the ponderation of my assets that I will invest in ETFs. For the next largest sectors, you can find the financial sector and the energy sector. And finally, we have the real estate sector, the consummation sector, the material sectors, as well as the communication sector. And in terms of the transactions that I've made over the past month of December, you can see that I've made numerous of them, but as you'll be able to notice, the vast majority of them is by selling a bunch of my different positions in companies to take some profits and in different ETFs as well. Because what I did with all of this money that I've been able to withdraw was to basically pay back my mortgage faster. As I mentioned in my previous videos, I had the objective to pay back my mortgage faster because in 2025 and in 2026, I want to be able to basically refinance my property to buy another bigger property. So on your side, if you want to discover what is my investing strategy for the rest of 2025, well, check out the video that's gonna be right over here and I will see you soon. Peace.